Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is, of course, as always, brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation, Alex Ramos, Jackie Richardson. Make sure you check them out on Facebook, and also by mybookie.ag. You can go to mybookie.ag, put in the promo code TGT100, and get up to 100% cash back bonus up to your first $300 deposit. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.com and click on the mybookie.ag banner at the top of the play. Whatever. I was doing so good, Jeremiah, until that happened. But I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my other co-host, a man that lasted longer than Dominic Brazil Saturday night. At least that's what his wife told me. Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm damn good, man. Let's get it rolling. And to be honest with you, I did last longer than Brazil, but it wasn't by much. So it was an early night for me as well.
At the end of the evening for him, he was disappointed. At the end of the evening for you, only your wife.
I tell my wife it's a sprint, not a marathon. She doesn't like that, but
yeah. So you were like the Wilder, and she was the Brazil.
Exactly.
You were happy. She was disappointed, but it doesn't matter because you were happy.
That's what I say, man. It's all about me.
All right, let's talk about a fight that lasted a little bit longer than Wilder Brazil. We're going to start off with Inoue with the knockout over Rodriguez in the second round. Now, Nonito Donaire is the next man who's supposed to fight Inoue. Is there anybody at his weight that can beat him, or do we have to move up a weight class or two to get somebody that can?
Well, I don't think I'm always cautious about, crowning somebody unbeatable because I don't buy it anymore. As good as, Lomachenko looks and Inoue looks and Usyk looks, I don't buy unbeatable. I mean, we've seen, and we're going to talk about something that's sort of similar later on in the night, but there are always styles that, are bound to give somebody fits. I mean, we've been over this time and time again. I mean, as great as somebody like Salvador Sanchez was and his troubles with boxer movers or, somebody who has problems with physical guys, for me, Inoue looks the part. I mean, he looks really damn good. I mean, his blend of speed and skill and power, I'm not sure what I've seen like it.
But the question is this. Because when we look at his resume, Taguchi, Rodriguez, Navarez, Carmona, Nieves, Payano, McDonald, they're all good fighters. But nobody that screams, this guy's great. And I agree with you because everybody has a tendency to want to just say the latest is the greatest. But I don't think we can make that claim about him yet. I don't think he's unbeatable. Because what I saw in that fight is this, though. Rodriguez was hitting him fairly often in the first round. And I know we can always say if the fight had continued later rounds, it may have been a little bit different. But for some reason, Inoue gets you out of there because he can hit. So what I saw was this. I saw enough stuff there to think that he is beatable. I just don't know if there's anybody at 115 that can get that done.
Yeah, you mean 118, but yeah
118.
So here's my thing, and
jockeys, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yeah, and here's my thing is I want to go back to your point before I piggyback off your other point is that Inoue, he's obviously I think for the ring and transnational he's going to move up the pound for pound rankings. The ring had him seventh, I believe. Transnational had him fifth, I believe. Here's my thing, and it's to your talk about his opposition level, and this is why I tell people to pump the brakes just a little bit because the divisions are a bit thinner down there, so when people are like, oh, well, he beat the number one guy in Omar Navarez at 115. Yes, that's true, but just go back and watch Omar Navarez years before in 2014 against Nonito Donaire. I mean, it was a completely pedestrian effort. He showed his cap there. He was in way over his head against a guy like Donaire. And then you bring up Taguchi as well, who is, again, he's a good fighter. And he was actually the ring's 108-pound champion for a little while, but he lost in his first defense against Heki Budler, who is certainly not an elite fighter. So we just got to be a little cautious when we start crowning guys this quickly. He looks the part, but we've seen a lot of guys look the part. And my thing is this. He really, and this is back to your other point, is that he has to fight somebody who's elite or somebody who's going to be able to hang in there and give him some moments, something that we haven't seen so far before we really know what this guy's about. And when I look at the landscape at 118, there's nobody at 118 itself who I think can hang with Inoue except for Nery. Luis Nery, I think, is a legitimate threat. He's a big southpaw. He's barely been able to make the weight. He's a big puncher. He's been knocking guys off. And when you think about what he's done, yes, he did get popped for PEDs. And funny enough, he had the excuse that he ate tainted meat as well. So he blew out Yamanaka, or sorry, not Yamanaka, but I can't remember the name right now. But he blew out the lineal champion at 118. And then, he got the title taken away because of the drug testing. Then he came in overweight in the rematch and blew him out still. My thing still is that he didn't need the drugs or the weight to blow the guy out. He's a damn good fighter. He hits hard. He's got some nuance. I think he's a threat to Nery. I think if Estrada moves up to 118, even though Estrada started pretty small, so I'm kind of wondering what his cap is well. But until he beats a guy like Estrada or Nery, I'm just not ready to crown him the world's best yet. And I'm not saying they do beat him. I mean, I would probably favor Inoue over both of those guys. But until he beats somebody like that, I'm just not convinced. I'm not on the train yet.
How about this? The guys I named, to me, the thing that stands out is they're all good fighters, but none of them are really big punchers. And that's another thing we don't know about him, because when I watch him, I think that he's great at throwing punches, but he's average at best in defending against them. And I think that he has a tendency to lose his balance easily when he gets hit, was what stood out to me against Rodriguez.
Yeah, and I think his defense is good. It's not great, but of course, for a guy who hits as hard as he does, I think his defense is pretty good. But yeah, that is one of the concerns. It's like, how's he going to react when he really gets cracked by a big puncher? Because that's the thing that makes Inoue so different, is that he is a one-punch knockout kind of guy, and it's a rarity, below 126. And so until then, I think you're right. We're going to have some question marks. But not only that, I would really like to see him against a good boxer mover as well. I mean, Rodriguez, I thought his game plan was disappointing. I mean, when he was moving a little bit, he seemed to have some success. But then when he went right at Inoue and started trading with him, that's when he got in a deep shit. I mean, Navarez was a pretty good boxer mover, but, in my eyes, he's years past his best and isn't really a true slickster. So until he fights a guy who's a big puncher, a good big puncher, or a real slickster, again, I'm going to have some concerns. So he's not the pound-for-pound best for me. But he's getting close. I mean, winning this tournament is going to do him.
Is he top 5 now?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think so.
All right, so Nonito Donaire. We know he's a little up there in age, but the one thing that stands out to me that does make the fight at least a little bit interesting is I think this is the first really big puncher Inoue has fought.
Yeah, I think Donaire is sort of like – this almost feels like a passing of the torch moment where, Donaire was the big puncher before this real big puncher. Donaire has a fantastic left hook, one of the best left hooks ever from flyweight to bantamweight. I mean, a lot of people forget that he actually hurt Nicholas Walters early on in their fight. So this is a dude who's been carrying his punching power from 112 to 126, and he's been doing it naturally. So I think if there's something to look forward to, it's that Donaire is still a legitimate puncher. I mean, you saw him light his last opponent up, in a highlight reel type stoppage. But that's the only thing, is that Donaire could land a punch, and then we might, see what Inoue's chin is really like. But my concern is that Donaire he's really gotten by on luck. I mean, he probably would have lost to Burnett. He probably would have lost to Tate. And, he's gotten by because of a couple injuries. And, yeah, he can still punch.
Yeah, and let's go off that, because we got Luke on Twitter, who said Donaire, as you said, got a lucky break in this tournament, or a couple. First fight, Burnett was injured. Second fight, Solani TT was injured and was replaced by Stephen Young on short notice on top of that. And he said, it seems like the only way Inoue could win this tournament, or the only way that Donaire could win this tournament would be off of a lucky shot, because his whole chance in this tournament is luck.
Yeah, I don't think I'd go so far as saying luck, because, Donaire is a crafty veteran.
I mean, he means luck because the two guys he's supposed to fight get injured.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm pretty much saying the same thing, that, Donaire doesn't really belong to be here. I don't think, I was a bit disappointed that they crowned Inoue, the Ring Magazine champion after beating Rodriguez, who was number 3 for them. But, for me, it was like, hey, well, can you justify him being number 2? And if you can't, then why bother? It doesn't really solve the question of who the best at 118 is. But yeah, I mean, I think Tate and Burnett would have been more interesting because of their skill set and their age. But yeah, we've just got to say, hey, Donaire, this is all he's got. It's a puncher's chance. But he is a big guy too, so that, I thought Rodriguez looked bigger than Inoue as well. So I suppose that's another factor that can be put in here. But I don't know. Inoue took some. You just look at the way he's been doing it recently, and he was taking a decent amount of shots in his last effort as well. So to me, it just doesn't bode well for him. But as always, we appreciate the comment.
Yeah, we have another comment here from Drewy14, but I can't understand what he said. It didn't make any sense. It looked like he's probably been in the Alabama public school system with Deontay Wilder.
I mean, is there any details you can tease out of that at all?
No, it's just like a big, long, complete run-on sentence that makes no sense. Yeah, I was going to give it a shot, but I don't think so. I don't think I can figure that one out. All right, let's go to Deontay Wilder. Were you impressed with the one-punch knockout of Dominic Breazeale?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I was impressed because, he got the job done, quickly and powerfully. I mean, I never thought that highly of Dominic Breazeale. I mean, you and I don't really think that highly of the heavyweight division, but to do it, in less than a round, and we said, in the weekly show that this is sort of a measuring stick. I mean, we understand that it's also Joshua's leftovers, but Breazeale was still, quality. Again, this is all relative to the modern heavyweight landscape, but he still did some good things after he got his butt whipped by Anthony Joshua. So it's not
bit. Come on,
no whipped.
You said bit though, and then you changed it to whip.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you said you listened to the show again. You said he get his butt bit, but that's all right. It would have made for a more entertaining fight.
Yeah, I'll replay it, But yeah, I mean, Breazeale's still again, in relatively speaking, he's a good heavyweight. And, for Wilder to go out there and just blitz him with a single right hand was impressive. I mean, the guy is a bona fide puncher, and it's exciting. I mean, he's given people something to talk about. Unfortunately, people are getting a little ahead of themselves with this. We do still have to understand that, his quality of opposition has not been particularly good.
Shit. And I can't believe you called Dominic Breazeale good.
Well, again, relative to the modern landscape.
No, you said he was good. You didn't say relative to the modern landscape.
No, I did.
Okay.
I did.
You didn't. You didn't when you first said it. You said he's good.
Well,
he sucks.
He's good. He's still
good. If you watched him against Anthony Joshua, he sucks. He's fought 8 rounds and got knocked out twice by 2 of the 3 best heavyweights, and I don't think he's won a round yet. I don't even know if he's landed too many punches. But the one thing that I did notice was he did, back Wilder off with a couple punches. I just think Dominic Breazeale is really limited. The thing that I think is great here is I don't take much away with it for Wilder. But I think anytime you can have Wilder do this, and if you could have Joshua do this to Ruiz, it doesn't even have to be the first round, but within 3 rounds in dominating fashion, I think you just made the fight 10 times bigger than what it was.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much what have you done for me lately sport, and for them both to score knockouts. And I do suspect that Anthony Joshua is going to score a knockout as well. I think Ruiz is
Either a
probably
knockout or a weasel just get tired and have a stroke because he's fat as hell.
yeah. The diabetes might kick in, and they'll have to. He can't come out for the
Is he
round
type
because he's
1
got.
or type 2?
I think he's all three.
He's like Jarrell Miller.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I suspect Joshua will get a stoppage as well. But you're right. I mean, getting the knockouts and doing it emphatically like that is really what is going to get people talking. It's going to get people buzzing. And in Tyson Fury, I think you elaborated on this nicely in the weekly show, and I know you've done it a number of times. But because Tyson Fury seems to have the most drawing power for his personality, but he needs to understand as well. I get he likes to act rebellious and whatnot, but he needs to understand that knockouts are where it's at too. I mean, it's not as if I know Tyson Fury is more of a boxer and he likes to be flashy and all that shit. But the thing is Tyson Fury is not. I don't think he's a powder puff puncher. He just doesn't sit down on his punches.
He wasn't earlier in his career. It seems from right before Klitschko to now, though, he's just interested in looking pretty and boxing people, and nobody wants to see that. Because I think this, from watching Wilder Fury, I would rather see Fury fight Joshua. I think they're the two best technical boxers. I think they're the two that have the most ability to maybe improve. But I think that that's the two most skilled fighters. But I would rather see Joshua fight Wilder because somebody's going to get knocked out.
Yeah, I think there's more excitement there, and that's really what you want. I mean, especially after years and years of building towards this. I mean, how long we've been talking about this fight. I mean, Jesus, it's like half a decade now.
How about this? Did Bob Arum screw up here? Should he have just fought Wilder the last fight? Because now he's going to fight Tom Schwartz, and it's probably going to go 8, 9, 10. Hell, it might go to distance. At the same time, while maybe Joshua starches Ruiz, Wilder starches Brazil, and then the talk is going to go from the two best heavyweights, or Wilder and Fury, or Fury and Joshua. Now it's going to switch to Wilder and Fury, just because they are more exciting. And come on, it's Tom Schwartz.
Yeah. Tom Schwartz is. I mean, from what I've seen, he's the worst of the bunch. I mean,
Schwartz, if Tom Schwartz fought Dominic Brazil would knock him out.
Yeah, that's the thing is Brazil has been ranked in the top 10 by good organizations, and I'm not talking about the alphabet nonsense.
But I still would like to bring up he sucks. So go ahead, though.
Yeah, and so is Andy Ruiz. Before Andy Ruiz,
he sucks too, but they don't suck as bad as Tom Schwartz. Tom Schwartz sounds like the guy that does my taxes.
Yeah, well, he sounds like an extra on like Magnum PI or something.
What do you know about Magnum PI? Anyway. Have you ever seen Magnum PI?
Maybe a few episodes.
No,
I mean, it was.
If you did, it was like when you were drunk in the middle of the night in college or something. So don't give me that crap.
Yeah, well, I know it's Tom Selleck, and he had a mustache and a red Ferrari, and a Hawaiian
you know what?
shirt.
I'm old enough to have watched that show, and I don't think I ever watched that show. It was like MacGyver. The only thing I ever saw of MacGyver was. I think it used to be the lead in the Monday Night Football, and all I knew is he could make like cheese and a Swiss Army knife and nuclear weapon.
Well, I couldn't tell you much about the substance of Magnum PI, but Tom Schwartz's dad
there was no substance in Magnum PI. So it's
Tom Schwartz's dad was. Tom Schwartz's dad was. I'm telling you, he was an extra in that flick.
Oh, okay.
Like one episode.
All right, I got you.
Yeah, but I mean, Schwartz is the worst of the bunch, and Fury has to understand that knockouts are where it's at too. I mean, I think Fury kind of fashions himself as a Muhammad Ali type figure, where he's a flashy boxer and he's got good defense and stuff. But he has to understand that Muhammad Ali wouldn't let you dick around either. I mean, he'd beat the crap out of you too.
Yeah, he knocked you out when he wanted to knock you out. If he didn't want to knock you out, he'd just torture you.
Yeah, exactly. He could get the stoppage if he wants to, and I suspect that Fury can get stoppages if he wants to as well. I mean, you watch the Christian Hammer fight, and he bludgeoned him a little bit, I mean, and Hammer's gone some rounds with some good fighters. But the unfortunate thing is that Deontay Wilder's schedule seems to be taken up for a few fights already. It seems like Luis Ortiz is already penciled in, and then Adam Konacki is after that. So for me, you're probably going to get, and again, a lot of this is question marks, but it seems like you may get Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua beforehand. Again, it's like, where do you even go? Because you look at the top 10. Again, we talked about this on on the weekly show. But you look at the heavyweight landscape, and just about everybody in the top 10 has been beaten by Joshua, Fury, or Wilder already. There's no reason to let
the only guy that I see here that would be dangerous is Dillian White, which means none of them are going to fight him.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, and you already heard, and that's what's stupid about all of this, and really all of the fans listening to this show, and just boxing fans in general, should really be taking notes about all of this. So the fact that Dillian White is clearly a better fighter, Dillian White would be the best heavyweight. Okay, so Dillian White, in terms of the WBC rankings, is the best of the best, right? But they keep putting him off and putting him off. Yet, how is it that Dillian White is apparently like number one, in the WBC, yet the WBC want him to fight Tyson Fury for a quote-unquote mandatory shot?
I can give this a shot. I'll give it a shot if you want an answer.
But hold on. But at the same time, Deontay Wilder's schedule is apparently already taken care of in terms of Luis Ortiz next, and then Adam Konacki after that. I mean, how do you wrap your head around that shit?
I can wrap my head around that shit like this. Dillian White is dangerous. The other guys aren't. I mean, let's look at it like this. Was it Christian Hammer? Luis Ortiz did not look real good against Christian Hammer. Let's face it. Before that, he beat Travis Kaufman and Rajan Kajanu. He's done nothing. He's done nothing but get older. If you would have had a rematch immediately between Wilder and Ortiz, I could have seen that because the first fight was a decent fight. There was some excitement there. But the only thing I see now is Wilder's gotten a little bit better. Ortiz has gotten a little bit older. So we know how that's going to end up. With Konacki, he's dangerous because he's a tough guy. And if he can take that hook, he could probably win the fight. But Dillian White is, I think, better than both. I think Dillian White would kick Luis Ortiz's ass right now. Luis Ortiz from 3 years ago, no. But the Luis Ortiz now, yes. So even though he's been ranked number one for probably, a year, they're not going to let him fight Deontay Wilder because that puts a Wilder-Joshua-Fury triumvirate in trouble. Now, what you got to ask yourself is this, though. Joshua, Wilder, and Fury, all three seem to want to take the safe route, keep their titles safe. Number one, what makes us think that at some point one of them will jump and fight the other one? And number two, why would they? Because they can just milk this. But eventually, two of these guys are going to make a fight, and they got to fight, don't they?
Yeah, they have to. Eventually, it's going to happen. I mean, we already did get Wilder versus Fury. It seems
but come on. I think this, real quick. We got Wilder versus Fury because Wilder thought Fury was an easy touch. He'd been off for 2 or 3 years hanging out in the strip clubs with snorting cocaine and, doing whatever stuff he did, eating himself up to 400 and something pounds. I think the only reason that fight got made was because the Deontay Wilder people, not Deontay himself, because I don't think any of these three guys are afraid of the other one, but I think Deontay's Wilder's people thought this is the best time to get him. He's not really in shape. He's not ready to fight, so we'll fight him now instead of fighting him when he is ready. Now, the thing that I will give Tyson Fury credit for is this. He didn't give Wilder an immediate rematch. I can see why he didn't because of what we just said. So I think the best Tyson Fury you will see is probably after a couple more tune-up fights. Because he went in to fight Wilder, and I don't think he was ready. But the thing is, he has enough skill that Deontay Wilder couldn't deal with it. And I think when you get a more ready Fury, I think it's a more dangerous Fury against Wilder or Joshua. And I think that's what Bob Arum's plan is here. I don't think he's ducking Deontay Wilder because, hey, He kicked Deontay Wilder's ass. I watched that fight. He won at least 8 rounds in that fight. And if you are one of those Deontay Wilder nut huggers, you're going to scream, he knocked him down twice, and, he won these rounds. And he really didn't. He didn't. And if you think that, you're an idiot. It's that simple. Or you're under the age of 35, and you have no clue what life's about. Because Tyson Fury, for lack of a better term, for 8 of the 12 rounds, owned his ass. And he beat his ass. And you know that. But you want to sit here and you want to scream as a Deontay Wilder fan, oh, look what my guy did. Your guy knocked out Dominic Breazeale. All I know is this. Before Deontay Wilder knocked out Dominic Breazeale, and before this fight was made, all Deontay Wilder fans would not give any respect that Anthony Joshua beat him. But now it seems like since Deontay Wilder beat him, it's a big deal. And it's really not. And none of this at the heavyweight division means a damn thing until at least 2 of these 3 guys fight each other.
Yeah, and that's the reason why it makes hardcore fans like us root for the underdog. I mean, we're really hoping for a Rocky moment here. It's like, hoping Ruiz wins or Schwartz
My
wins.
hope is the bald-headed Polish guy.
Yeah, Konaki. Yeah, he's yeah. I mean,
he looks like Butterbean's little illegitimate brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, man. Because when you think about it, I mean, Joshua and Wilder, they've been ranked so highly for years now. Again, it almost feels like it's what half a decade in the making or something. I mean, when exactly did Wilder become in the top 3? I mean, it's just years, and it's unfortunate. I mean, that we've got to constantly wait until there's a damn lunar eclipse before we actually get a big fight. That's not how you run a sport. It's not what people want to see. I mean, it sucks, man. But if Wilder does in fact have 3 fights already lined up in the Breazeale, in the Ortiz, and in the Konaki, I mean, what exactly does Joshua and Fury do? I mean, if they don't really have the rematch planned.
Well, see, this could backfire on Wilder because while he's dicking around with them, you could have Fury and Joshua fight twice and make a ton of money. Now, it could also work out for him where he comes out and he's just as spectacular against Ortiz and Konachki, and then he just fights the winner when those 2 fight each other, and then you've got an even bigger fight. But the way I look at this, there's so many variables here because this is the heavyweight division. And, Ortiz stunned him the one time. What if he does it again and knocks him out, and then he's completely left out? Joshua fights Fury, and that's it for him. Because let's face it, when you're a guy that's a one-punch knockout guy, and that's pretty much all you are, once you get beat, that mystique is gone, and the money drops big time.
Yeah, and apparently Tyson Fury told Wilder to suck his nuts today.
Tyson Fury told Deontay Wilder to suck his nuts. That is awesome. That's why I like Tyson Fury.
Yeah, me too. But I wanted to say something too that goes to your point, is that if I'm not mistaken, Deontay Wilder is the oldest of this bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, Fury is 31. Joshua's 29, and Wilder, I think, is 33. I mean, this very well could not play out in Wilder's favor.
Oh, Arthur, I love the comment. I'm not going to read it on air. I'll tell it to you later, Jeremiah. Let's see.
Thanks, Arthur, whatever it
is. Yeah, I don't know if you want to thank Arthur or not. And luckily it was a direct message, so it's an inside joke now. Let's see. At an army of 1, I do not see the need in Wilder fighting Ortiz again. He KO'd him already. I wish Joshua will step up and fight. He needs to be fighting Fury so he can knock him out once and for all.
Yeah. Well, again, we appreciate you chiming in, and it is, he's echoing the sentiments of a lot of us in the sense that we just want to see the big fights already. I mean, we don't really need to waste our time with any of this. I mean, what exactly does a rematch with Ortiz do? It doesn't do anything. Like you said, one's better, one's worse. And the fact that Ortiz really looked like he had some chinks in the armor against Christian Hammer. Again, it's not like Hammer was really fighting back that effectively, but it was just one of those things where Ortiz just looked slow. He looked kind of dull. He had a hard time finding Hammer, and he couldn't get rid of him at all. So let's just get on with it, man. I mean, beating Ruiz doesn't really do much for Joshua. But again, I know it is a substitute opponent, so I can't be too hard of him there. But we just got to get on with it, man.
All right. At Sackmeister said Wilder picked Ortiz simply because he is the best out there, and he gives the fans what they demand. Hey, Sackmeister, you're an idiot. All right, because fans don't demand Wilder Ortiz. Am I wrong here, Jeremiah?
No, that's not what we're demanding. Obviously, I mean.
Hey, and I don't mean to call people idiots when they ask questions, but when they're stupid and idiotic, I'll just say it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's not what we're demanding. I mean, I don't know why we accept anything less than the best fighting the best. I mean, this is why you get stupid fights like Billy Joe Saunders versus Shifat Isufu. This is the problem.
Shifat Isufu. That was the number one contender. So for all you people that think this matters, because this is the other thing that pisses me off, is when they put Deontay Wilder on the list with like 9 successful heavyweight title defenses, he's never been the heavyweight champion of the world. He hasn't.
Yeah, it's gotten so convoluted, man. When I saw that go up on as a graphic, and you see his name among the bona fide legends of the sport, it's nonsense, man. Jack Dempsey didn't have a WBO title to work with. Rocky Marciano didn't have to collect 3 trinkets or 2 trinkets. I mean, you have to be the heavyweight champion to put your name among the list of guys like Joe Louis and Jack Dempsey and Muhammad Ali. I mean, you got to learn to separate the difference between a titleist and a champion. And right now, Deontay Wilder is not a champion. None of these guys are the champion. Until they sort it out among themselves, all these alphabet soup organizational defenses, they mean diddly.
Diddly. Wasn't there a singer named Diddley?
I don't know. Song
no, that was P. Diddy. All right, no big deal. All right, so let's go on because we do have a fight that boxing fans want to see, or at least I want to see it, Jeremiah. Regis Prograis against Josh Taylor in the World Boxing Super Series Finals. I like this fight. I think that Prograis will win this fight, but I think these are the 2 best at 140 pounds.
Yeah, and this is what fans should relish in, at least somewhat. I mean, again, I don't like the addition of 140 pounds. I don't really like it as a division. It doesn't seem like a necessary stopover from 135 to 147. I mean, we've seen the great ones make that jump, but yeah, I mean, in terms of what's going to happen this year, that might be the best fight of the year. I mean, we're talking about 2 guys in their prime, guys who have faced good opposition before finally getting there, and 2 talented individuals, right? Nothing went wrong. And so, it's not a Donaire Inoue situation. I really like it, man. And I think a lot of the British fans are sweating a little bit because, Taylor had a pretty close fight against Berinchyk. I mean, he won clear enough. He scored a couple knockdowns, that clearly put him ahead. But, we're talking about 2 talented guys, and not only that, 2 talented southpaws. I mean, how often does that happen? So, yeah, I really like this fight, and whoever wins it is going to be the champion of 140 pounds. This is what people should be praising. I mean, honestly, the World Boxing Super Series has done a lot of good. I mean, it might be the best thing going in the sport right now. I mean, with all this in-house crap going on, guys wanting to play ball on their side of the court, at least we're getting this sort of stuff mixed in. And again, whoever wins is the champion. I don't know who I want. I don't know. Like, part of me slightly favors Taylor, but I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one to call, and it's really a 50-50 fight.
All right, Robin from the UK says, I'm sorry, I don't see anything special about either one. Maybe a good fight, maybe not. I know I can't listen to British broadcasts just like I can't listen to American broadcasts. Horrible commentators. Every time Taylor took a breath was a big deal. I like the kid Barrios better than either of these two.
Yeah, that's been one of my complaints too. Is the bias that comes with some of the British commentary is it's awful when it comes to that. I mean, I can't stand listening to it sometimes, and honestly, a lot of times I just prefer watching like the Russian feed or something, or the Ukrainian feed, just because a lot of those guys are pretty stoic. They're not. They don't overdo it like Mauro Ranallo.
I got one for you.
Yeah.
You got to hear this. This is from App Boxing Guy, who looks like he's like 19. Since when did Ring Magazine become a sanctioning body that deserves to hand out belts for world champions?
Yeah. Well, I mean, where do we want to draw the line here? It's
well, the thing is this. I mean, the Ring Magazine used to be the only thing that mattered back in the day, and it was better that way.
Well, yeah, and that's you have to understand boxing history to get where this is all derived from, because once the Walker Law passed in 1926, I believe it was, that standardized round limits for championship fights. So once you had the Walker Law that passed in New York, and then you had the Ring Magazine started by Nat Fleischer, actually things were pretty good back then. The Ring Magazine was pretty much the go-to publication. I mean, places like Boxing News have been around for, I think even longer. I think Boxing News has been around for a bit longer, but you had the Police Gazette, which was before that, but the Ring Magazine was crowning the champions. Everybody looked to them for some clarity in the sport. And I understand that they're not a sanctioning body. I get that, but they don't charge fees. But there's prestige there, right? I mean, honestly, do we want to say that, a WBO title ring means more than the Ring Magazine? I mean, the WBO has been around, since the late 80s, early 90s? I mean, do we want to say that the IBF matters more? Yeah, they're not a sanctioning body in the sense that the IBF and WBO are, but they've certainly got more prestige. And if you ask any hardcore fan, I think that they tell you that the Ring Championship weighs more than just about any of the other alphabet trinkets, though of course that has become muddied in recent years because they've broken the lineal lines. Their championship policy has changed. They got owned by Oscar de la Hoya. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm part of a rival organizations. I still respect a lot of what the Ring does. I mean, they mostly get it right. But this is why boxing is such a damn mess. I mean, we have a magazine crowning champions. I mean, this is why we should, shoot for a single governing body so we don't have to deal with all this mess.
Well, how about this? If we only had a lightweight and a welterweight division, maybe Prograis would be fighting Crawford right now.
Yeah, and that's how, that's of course how John Ehrenhofer would put it. I mean, he immediately looks at these guys as potential, prospects in the division above, So
Prograis with his size and Taylor with his size definitely are, I think.
Oh yeah, they're future welterweights undoubtedly, and whoever wins this is going to be the man. I mean, the classic divisions are still money divisions. I mean, 147 is a division that just about everybody loves. It's where you can make a lot of money, and you can see that the talent is deeper there as well. I mean, compare 147 to 140, and you'll see the difference there. So yeah, if Prograis ends up winning this, he's a big time American, and I'd love to see him against Crawford if he wins. That's good potential there.
All right, the Deeks from the UK, at least I assume he is, because he's got an American flag on his little profile picture, says, really looking forward to this one. I am slightly favoring Prograis on this. I think his power will keep Taylor tentative. I could definitely see that. That's kind of how I see the fight also.
Yeah, again, thanks for chiming in, and, I think it could go either way. And honestly, you could see that before this fight was announced, Taylor seemed to be not a heavy favorite, but a clear favorite. But I think after their two respective performances, those odds have gotten a lot closer. So I'm interested to see how they've got this one leading up to the fight. I want to, check out those some of the odds and see exactly where this is going. But this is the thing is, regardless if I don't like the 140-pound division all that much and whatnot, or you don't think these two are elite operators, I think that's fine. I think those are valid opinions. But we have to be excited by the fact that this is a tournament format and the two best in the division are fighting, and these guys are in their primes. Right? I mean, potentially they're not in their primes. I suppose, they can move up to 147 and look a little better, right? But from what I'm observing, they're the two best. They're in their primes, and we rarely ever get something like that in this sport. So I think we should enjoy it for what it is.
All right, Jeremiah, we want to go ahead and move on this day where we've got Larry Holmes versus Tim Witherspoon.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And and you're going to be better at this one than I am. I tried. I haven't seen the fight in full. I tried catching some rounds.
Oh, come on. You've never seen the fight in full?
I haven't. I have seen some rounds. It's a really good
fight.
Well, yeah. So this is, again, you're going to have to carry this one because I haven't seen it in full.
Oh, I do Survive in Advance with Steve Risley every day. I'm used to carrying people through an entire show, so I just got to carry you through 5 minutes. I'll be good.
That's all right. Hey, well, at least I won't be completely out of my depth because I have seen some rounds, and this is just what I saw from some of the observations.
The ninth round was one of the great rounds you'll see in the heavyweight fight, too.
Well, yeah, and it was better than anything we've seen recently, too.
Well, see, but let's do this, though. Before we talk about that fight, I think the interesting thing here is to talk about why this fight was so competitive. Because Tim Witherspoon was only in his 16th fight. And what I remember of this, Holmes had beaten Cooney in, June of 1982. And he defended his title at the end of the year in the Astrodome against, of course, Tex Cobb, who he beat the living shit out of. And then he defended in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which was about as close as he could get to his home of Easton, against Lucien Rodriguez. And against Lucien Rodriguez, he was kind of out of shape, pudgy. And this is a point where I got to talk to Larry Holmes the one time we did the interview. And he brought up a few things about this time. But it was kind of like after the Cooney fight, he kind of just wanted to take a few years off. He was kind of burnt out. And if you look at the people he fought around this time, you had the Tex Cobb, Lucien Rodriguez. After Witherspoon, he fought Scott Frank, Marvis Frazier. He did fight Bone Crusher Smith, but nobody knew Bone Crusher Smith was decent. He fought David Bay, Carl Williams. So he was basically skating through, I think, after the Cooney fight. And I think that he thought Witherspoon was kind of like Scott Frank and a Marvis Frazier and a Randall Cobb. And I think this jumped up and bit him in the ass because Tim Witherspoon was a really good fighter. And I think without Don King, with all the mind games that he played with him, I think Tim Witherspoon could have been a champion that in 1986 or 87 could have gave a young prime Mike Tyson all kind of hell because Witherspoon was a really talented guy. In this fight, it was, I think this was one of Don King's big cards where he had like 3 title fights because I'm not 100% sure here, but I think this might have been the undercard of Dokes Weaver 2, wasn't it? Or Dokes Weaver 2 was on the undercard. Mm-hmm. I don't remember who the other fight was, but Dokes Weaver was a hell of a fight. I think Greg Page might have been on this undercard, but I'm not 100% sure. But Holmes came into this like a 6-1 favorite, and Witherspoon, I think, was ranked. He was ranked in the top 5, but I think that was just because he was put there by Don and Carl King because they wanted his fight. Before you talk about the fight, though, this is one that Holmes told me off air was the day before the fight, he got diarrhea because he ate too much food after the weigh-in. And he said that was part of his problem. And I do know this. When I get the shits, it does affect me negatively.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you get, like, it was probably hot as hell. And, you get your thighs rubbed together a little bit. Next thing you know, you're scalded. And shit's rough like that.
Yeah. Well, and, sometimes these things happen. I mean, that's why, I don't give some of these guys a hard time because, hell, you look at some of the real old-timers and they were fighting every, like Willie Pep averaged a fight like every 6 weeks or something. And I'm like, yeah, if he got upset by some no hope or something, I'm like, yeah, well, maybe he had the flu that
Yeah,
night, or
and see,
yeah.
Holmes had fought in Lucian Rodriguez like 2 months before, less than 2 months before this. Because I remember seeing the Lucian Rodriguez fight. It was on a like Saturday afternoon, I think, on NBC Sports World, and it was a god awful fight. And the same thing, he fights Scott Frank after that, and he fought Scott Frank on live primetime TV on NBC Sports. I think it was like in September or October, and he beat the hell out of him. Tim Witherspoon was pay per view, and I think they called it the Crown Affair. I just can't remember what the other title fight was, but I'm pretty sure Dokes Weaver 2 was on this card. I
No,
may be
I think
completely wrong,
it
but
was. So I looked it up. It was Ocasio versus Stevens. It was a cruiserweight fight.
yeah, but wasn't Dokes and Weaver 2 under this too?
Oh yeah. That was yeah. So that was a WBA fight too.
Okay, so Stevens Ocasio, I didn't remember, but I cannot be blamed for that. But all right, so tell me what you remember about the fight.
Well, okay. Before I get into that, but could you imagine a card nowadays? Again, it's not like these were.
That would be like having Usyk and Breedis, and like Wilder fights Ruiz and Joshua fights Brazil, or whatever the hell it is. But
Yeah,
actually, I don't even know if we could get a card that good nowadays. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you had 3 alphabet trinket fights on the fight or on the card, so yeah, that was pretty damn good. Well, yeah, just from the brief observation that I had was, I noticed that Witherspoon was really good at trying to take Larry Holmes' jab away,
Yeah.
where he had this high guard, and he was just real active with his parrying. He was real active with his counter jabs. His right hand as always was sharp. He was aggressive. I mean, he just looked sharp all around in this fight, and Holmes just seemed a little taken back by how, I don't want to say, I would say how ineffective his own jab was, because he was used to out jabbing a guy. I mean, he's regularly put on the list of the best jabs in boxing history. But Witherspoon to me was just so active and so conscious about taking the jab away. That's just what I found most interesting about the footage that I watched.
Yeah. You didn't watch enough to really have an opinion on who won the fight, then, did you?
No.
Because actually, I had Holmes winning the fight. I didn't when I originally saw it, but this is before I ever got to talk to Larry Holmes and learned that he wasn't really that bad of a guy. He just, whatever came to his head came out of his mouth. And really, I kind of missed that. But then again, somebody like that nowadays probably wouldn't even be allowed to fight. So you either got to put on a show like Deontay Wilder, or you got to be like Anthony Joshua and be so subdued. But when I looked at this, the thing that strikes me the most, because I did watch this again today, and it's a close fight. I don't think it was a robbery either way. And I remember I subscribed to Sports Illustrated back in the day, and I remember getting that issue. And I think on the issue, like Holmes's right eye is like completely swelled up, and I think when you look, and this is really something when you think about it, but I think this was by far the best fight Tim Witherspoon ever had in his career. And
Yeah.
the other thing that strikes me is this. If you watch Michael Spinks 2 years later when he beat Larry Holmes, the style was similar, only Witherspoon didn't have the foot movement to go with it.
Yeah, no, that's actually an interesting point. I think there was some similarities there. I don't think Witherspoon was as kind of herky jerky either. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. But I think that Spinks tried to take away the jabs similar. He just didn't have. He had a lot more movement with it because Spinks was here and he was there and he was all over the damn place at the same time in that fight. Michael Spinks was perfect that night to beat Larry Holmes.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you're talking about too is Spinks could feint you with his feet, which is not something you see very often.
Couldn't do that. You don't see it at the heavyweight division except for Ali and that Michael Spinks.
Exactly. No, I completely agree.
Maybe Chris Bird.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. trying to think of somebody else who maybe, because there's been so few pure boxers. I mean, and not that Spinks was a pure boxer, but his feet were. You could tell he was just obviously lighter on his feet than just about any of these guys. But yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the other guys who could. I mean, probably maybe some of the old timers, but I'd have to go way back to like pure boxers, like I don't know, maybe Tommy Loughran or Maxie Rosenblum or something. I mean, I really don't recall any heavyweight who could feint you. But yeah, that was the thing about Spinks is he would move it, he would bounce in and then he would bounce out and then he would just throw these punches that, like the way he held his hands, it was tough to time. I mean, he didn't really cock his shots. I mean, his right hand was fantastic, right? It just kind of came off the hip with, just the utmost technicality. So. Yeah, I mean, there really isn't. Yeah, there aren't very many people like Michael Spinks that I can think of, even at heavyweight.
Yeah, and I think with this fight and the decision, I think that expectations have a way of shaping people's perceptions, and no one anticipated Witherspoon giving Holmes such a tough, close battle. And so when the fight went 12 rounds, went the distance, Holmes got stunned a little bit. He retained the title by a split decision, and many people got caught up in the excitement of, Tim Witherspoon's unexpectedly brave challenge. They cry foul. They insisted Witherspoon had been robbed. I don't think that was the case. I think Holmes acquitted himself well, and at best, maybe a draw for Witherspoon, but I still think Holmes edged the fight. And I think hindsight shows us that instead of a Holmes underachieving against an unproven youngster, I think the fight was in fact kind of a high point in Larry's long career because he was definitely on the downside here. And Witherspoon, I think, would go on to become one of the best heavyweight boxers of the 80s. And I think that was Witherspoon, who was one of the top 80s heavyweights, arguably at his finest. And this is a Holmes that is past his prime, and Holmes still had enough to be able to beat this young guy.
Yeah, and one had they, like a rematch, it's that's what I like to think about too. Is obviously it didn't happen, but I always think about, like you just assume that the greater fighter is the more adaptable guy, and you think if they have a rematch, well, Holmes, regardless of how you feel, to me it seems to. Again, it's all hypothetical, but Holmes was the more adaptable guy, and I think he would have won clear enough in a rematch.
Well, if you look at Holmes, how did he do in rematches? Didn't have a lot of them, but I mean, the one that stands out to me is Ernie Shavers, who really, I think that outside of the knockdown that he suffered in the 7th round against Shavers, if you watch the first fight, you ever see the first fight between Holmes and Shavers?
Yes.
Okay, that is actually, it's like a 10-2, 11-1, 12-0 blowout, but every round was close and competitive, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And when they fought the second time, I thought Holmes dominated the first 6 rounds. He gets knocked down, and then he dominates the rest of the fight. So I think when you looked at that, outside of the knockdown, I think Holmes dominated Shavers more in the second fight than he did the first fight.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and obviously a lot of people thought that Holmes won the rematch against Spinks as well. So
yeah, I thought he did, but I think that was also. This is the thing that always struck me about Spinks, and nobody ever talked about it that much. I don't think. Maybe you've heard about it, but he used to train by doing all of his running in boots.
Huh.
Did you know that? He always ran in boots. Now, this is the thing. The boots, running in boots, will destroy your knees. And he trained excessively hard. If you watched him with Mackie Shulstone, I remember watching Holmes and Spinks' first fight, where they did like this 10-minute thing where they showed how Mackie Shulstone got him in shape and everything. And he worked extremely hard. And he went from long distance running in boots to running sprints, not in boots. I think the boots, which, if you watch training footage from like 1979 up until the Eddie Davis fight, he almost always wore the boots. And there was no knee braces. When he fought Cooney the first time, you had a knee brace. By the time he fought Spinks, you had 2 knee braces. So I think that the Holmes Spinks 1 fight was pretty much it for him. I think he was on the downside after that first Holmes fight because also, people talk about Roy Jones and he gained all this weight and he lost it and how it affected him. I think that over time, I don't think Michael Spinks really had the frame. I know he was like 6 foot, over 6 foot, so height wise he had it. But shoulder wise and everything, I don't know if he really had the frame to carry 205, 210 pounds well.
Yeah, maybe, but I can tell you the guy who beat Larry Holmes in the first fight was
that was a bad dude. And I always tell people to this day when Tyson fought Spinks, and you remember Wally Matthews?
Yeah, the New York writer.
New York Times writer, and we had this conversation on Twitter a couple years ago because I put up a Mike Tyson argument or an article or a Michael Spinks argument, and he's like, yeah, the worst pick I ever made, I picked Michael Spinks to beat Mike Tyson, and I did the same thing. And the reason I did that was off of that first fight because I still think if he would have come in, and I know he couldn't physically, it was 2 or 3 years later, and I don't think the body was in the same shape anymore, but the Spinks of that night, 1985, I think would have gave Tyson all kind of hell in 1987 or 88. I'm not saying he beats him, but I think that Spinks and the way he fought could have given anybody trouble that night.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question because obviously, do you think he could have given somebody like Ali trouble?
Michael Spinks?
Yeah, that Spinks.
Which Ali are we talking about?
Just pick both of them. Pick Clay and then Ali.
60s Ali, no. Ali was too strong. People forget Ali could punch. I mean, his knockout percentage, I think, is close to 70%. And he fought all the great guys, and he stopped a lot of them. I think Michael Spinks, if you put him 1978 in a Superdome, would have kicked the shit out of Ali.
Interesting.
Now, Ali 76 and before, 77 and before, no. But once you get to the end of Ali's career, 77, 78, I think there's a reason why. I mean, number one, Jimmy Young gave him all kind of hell in 1976. And Jimmy Young, I don't think, was the puncher Michael Spinks was. I know he wasn't the puncher Michael Spinks was, even moving up in weight. Plus, Michael Spinks isn't going to stick his head between the ropes and stuff. Michael Spinks was technically an excellent boxer. He's as good a light heavyweight as I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I don't think, including Roy Jones to me, I think the most technically superior boxer I've seen, the biggest punch, was Michael Spinks. So if you're going to put Michael Spinks 1977, 78, the Ernie Shavers, tonight Shavers lost to Holmes, lost to Ali, fairly close decision. I think Michael Spinks could beat that guy. The 1985 Michael Spinks beats the 1977 or 78 Muhammad Ali.
Does he beat Holyfield?
No, never. He's not big enough. Holyfield's going to take him to hell and back. And Michael Spinks would go to hell and back, but Evander Holyfield...
He ain't coming back.
This is the thing. Evander Holyfield has the most perfect name of any boxer I've ever seen. Steroids or not, that son of a buck was the real deal. And if you were going to fight him, let's look at the people to beat him. The people to beat him, Riddick Bowe, big, strong, had a great jab, could box, but he could punch. Outside of that, who else beat him pre-1995, 94? Ain't too many people. And the people that gave him trouble were big, strong guys like Michael Dokes, who had quick hands, Merciless Ray Mercer, who was just a big, strong guy. I don't see... I think at the heavyweight division, who did Holyfield really fight that was just strictly a boxer?
Well, I don't think...
there aren't that many.
Yeah, it's rare. To be a pure boxer at heavyweight is rare.
But see, I think the way... with the Larry Holmes of 1985, Larry Holmes was kind of a plotter. He wasn't really dancing anymore. He was standing in the middle of the ring, and he was just going to try to jab your head off. And when you got somebody giving you so many angles, you got a problem. Evander Holyfield was a dude that, nobody ever brings up his boxing ability, but he was a guy that could adapt to whatever was in front of him most of the time. If you know what I'm saying.
No, I think people get too caught up in his wars, about him being like a warrior and all that shit. But I mean, shit, all you got to do is watch the Mercer fight. I mean, which is funny enough on this anniversary too. But he hurts Ray Mercer. Actually, Mercer had to take a knee because he caught him with a counter left hook off the ropes. Like landed just enough, had just enough of a window to land that punch. But yeah, in terms of overall ability, there are very few better than Evander Holyfield.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, Holyfield and Marciano both get downgraded a lot of times just because of their size and all this shit. But you know what? I mean, they're probably the last two guys in the world I would ever want to be stuck in a ring with because it's damn near impossible to beat them. You almost got to be willing to die to beat Rocky Marciano. And you almost got to be willing to die to beat Evander Holyfield. I mean, you got to go through hell to beat those guys. And Holyfield, I mean, he was a guy that was a light heavyweight when he started his boxing career in the pros. Then he goes to cruiserweight. Then he goes to heavyweight. And he's banging out guys. I mean, come on. He stood toe-to-toe with George Foreman. Steroids or not, I don't know that steroids makes you be able to take Big George Foreman's punch. You know what I mean? Well, and he stood in front of him, and he was whacking with George Foreman, and he got the best of it. Because I remember seeing Holyfield staggered once, but there was multiple occasions where I thought he hurt Big George. And Big George ain't nobody to mess with, especially when I think he weighed in for the George Foreman fight around 209, 210. I mean, come on, you're going to stand there and go toe-to-toe with him? And I think that people miss this about Holyfield and Marciano. The reason Mike Tyson can never be a great is because he never overcame obstacles. Rocky Marciano was the first time he fought Roland Lastarza, getting his ass whipped the first half of the fight. He adjusts, starts scoring the body and wins. Jersey Joe Walcott is whipping his ass through 12 rounds, and he knocks Walcott out. Ezzard Charles won the first 5 rounds in their fight. He wins the next 10. The same thing with Holyfield. Burt Cooper knocked him down, but Burt Cooper didn't beat him. And that second Bo Holyfield fight, with Riddick Bowe's skill, Evander Holyfield, with his size difference, should have never, ever been able to beat a guy like Riddick Bowe. And nobody thought he could beat a guy like Mike Tyson. But the thing is this, the thing that makes an all-time great fighter is that heart. And I think when people look at a Rocky Marciano and Evander Holyfield, they really undervalue the heart those guys fought with. And I don't know that a prime Ali beats them. I really don't. I mean, prime Ali against a prime Marciano, somebody's just going to walk your ass down for 15 rounds and doesn't care what you hit him with. That's a hard dude to deal with. The same thing with Evander Holyfield. I would love to see Evander Holyfield of 1992 or 1991, 1990 fight a prime Lennox Lewis, because I think Evander Holyfield would have beat him then. I think by the time you got to the late 90s, I think Lewis was maturing, was in his prime, and I think Holyfield had been through so many wars that they just took a lot out of him. That and the overuse of steroids, I think, took a lot out of him.
Yeah, well, what I would like to see is I'd like to see Rocky Marciano put on Holyfield steroids, and then they fight each other.
How about this? We don't even have to put him on steroids. Let me watch Rocky Marciano fight Evander Holyfield.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Just
because steroids don't give you the heart to go through what Holyfield had to go through.
Well, no, because most of these guys are using, and they're not showing that amount of heart. So
yeah, I mean, come on. And then people say, well, they don't look like they're using. James Toney didn't look like he was using, and he did, no matter what he says.
Neither did Jarrell Miller, yeah.
Yeah, definitely doesn't look like he's using steroids, but he was, because there's all kind of different performance enhancers. All I know is this: the greatest heavyweights in the world ever to me were Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, Larry Holmes, Lennox Lewis. Those are the greatest, because those guys, I mean, Lennox Lewis, dude got knocked out by people and then came back and knocked them out. And there's a lot to be said for that. Now, I don't know if I'd put Lewis as high as the other guys just because of that. But I mean, Joe Louis, a lot of young fighters would be completely scarred forever by what Max Schmeling did to him. And instead, 2 years later, he almost killed literally killed Max Schmeling in the ring. Rocky Marciano, that punch, everybody freaks out about the Dominic Brazil punch. Go back and look at Rocky Marciano knocking out Jersey Joe Walcott. And I'm sorry, no matter what you think of Jersey Joe Walcott's age, Dominic Brazil don't make a pimple on Jersey Joe Walcott's ass. And I can tell you this right now, anybody out there listening, those Wilder nut huggers, Rocky Marciano, he'd have broke Deontay Wilder in fucking half.
Yeah, man. Well, the right hand that he landed on Walcott that stopped him in the 13th is
could you imagine that right hand landed in fucking Deontay Wilder's rib cage?
Yeah, could you? Obviously it's like an iconic shot. There arguably haven't been any better right hands thrown after it.
You know why it's iconic though? It's iconic not because he hit somebody like that and knocked him out. It's iconic because it was Jersey Joe Walcott, and that's how he won the title.
Well, and it was situational.
He didn't win the title by winning a 12-round decision over fucking Berman Stavern.
Well, yeah, and also because it was situational. Wasn't Marciano cut badly, and they were like, hey, man, you got to go get it?
I think there you're thinking more of the second Ezzard Charles fight, where the first Charles fight was actually fairly close. It was a great fight. The second fight between Marciano and Charles was the one where you see the iconic picture of Rocky's nose split down the middle.
Yeah.
Now, the thing people miss about that is this. He was actually winning the fight easily. He was up like 6-1. But he also got a huge cut over his eye. They were worried that they might stop it. And then the next round, Marciano just goes out and detonates his ass. So that's what a true champion does. And, Rocky Marciano beat Ezzard Charles twice, Jersey Joe Walcott twice, Archie Moore, Lisa Vold, who was a damn good fighter, Harry Matthews, Roland LaStarza, he beat him twice. Ain't none of these bums we got today. And for all you Anthony Joshua fans, Rocky Marciano knocked the fuck out of him, too.
All right, time to wrap it up.
That's all I got to say about that. Because I know what I see and my eyes don't lie. And yeah, he may only be 5'10" and weigh 190 pounds, but nobody ever beat him. And you know what? We can't say that about Deontay Wilder because he's got a draw. So he can never be or equal that record. And the heavyweights today suck ass anyways. All right, Jeremiah, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think suck ass is a good note to leave it on. But nah.
Am I wrong? If you disagree with me, we can argue about it. I like
and this is the thing. This is the thing that I think kind of speaks to what you're saying too. Is that Rocky Marciano, he beat guys who had a lot of nuance. He's often pegged as this almost like caveman type fighter where
he wasn't. He wasn't. His leg and shit, but he wasn't real easy to hit. It was just he was always coming forward, so you were going to hit him. But shit, Ezzard Charles is one of in my money, Ezzard Charles is one of the 10 greatest fighters that ever lived. And Marciano beat him twice, and he knocked him out the second time. And I think there's a lot to say that Charles is maybe the greatest light heavyweight of all time.
Yeah.
And Archie Moore, one of the greatest of all time. And Archie Moore, this is the thing. I heard this shit today from these people. Rocky didn't fight the best black contenders like Nino Valdez and all that. That's horse shit. It's just horse shit. When you look at it, Nino Valdez, the reason he didn't get to fight Rocky Marciano is he was the number 1 contender. He fought the number 2 contender, which was Archie Moore, and Archie Moore kicked the shit out of him. So Archie Moore got the title shot against Marciano instead of Valdez, and Marciano knocked Moore's ass out the same way he would have knocked Valdez's ass out.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of nitpicking, but no, that's the thing is when you talk about how good or how great Charles and Walcott were. These guys were not great because they weren't Marciano type fighters where they just kept coming at you. These guys had a lot of boxing nuance, and
the guy that had the most nuance was probably Roland LaStarza.
He was a good boxer as well. But that's my thing is Marciano is finding a way to get it done against classy fighters like this. And to think that he was just, walking to you with his hands up and just punching until he found you, it's just not the case.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up because my wife just came in and asked me when I was going to wrap this up. So that means either she wants to go to bed or I might get lucky. So I'm going to get off here right now in hopes for the latter, but expecting the first thing. All right,
Married
guys,
life.
we're going to wrap the show up. Me and the immortal Steve Risley, 1981 national champion, will be back with Survive and Advance at noon tomorrow. We'll have Cole Hanna, our NBA beat writer, on to talk a little NBA basketball and to talk about where the Golden State Warriors rank all time and to talk a little bit about their series and whether it's over. I don't know because the game finished while we were on here. So, all right. Blazers won, so it's 3-1. All right, so we're going to get off here. And the Sheridan Report will be here at 2 tomorrow. Me and Jeremiah will be back at 11 tomorrow night. So make sure you check us out. Follow us on Twitter. You can send us messages for the show, questions, ideas for the show. If you want to come on the show because you think Deontay Wilder would have beat Rocky Marciano and Rocky Marciano was overrated, we can have that debate too. That'll be fun. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. So, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.